The Black Terror sprinted through the fog, the sound of his boots echoing off the slick cobblestone streets. He knew the layout of Empire City like the back of his hand, each alleyway and rooftop a silent accomplice to his crusade. His heart hammered in his chest, not from exertion, but from the burning need to bring justice to those who had been wronged. The scream had been a siren call, one he never ignored. He arrived at the warehouse, a towering structure that seemed to swallow the light from the street lamps. The fog clung to it, thick and impenetrable, but Terror's resolve was unyielding. He scaled the side of the building with the grace of a cat, his cape fluttering in the damp breeze. At the top, he crouched low and surveyed the scene below, a line of shadowy figures shuffling towards the edge of the pier, prodded by the harsh lights of the mercenaries' flashlights. The warehouse door was a heavy slab of steel, but it was no match for the enraged hero. He wrenched it open with a deafening screech, charging into the chaos with the fury of a tornado. The mercenaries spun around, their eyes wide with surprise and fear as they took in the specter of retribution that had just entered their domain. Terror moved swiftly, his fists and feet striking with surgical precision. Each blow was a declaration of war on the scum that preyed upon the weak. The sound of breaking bones and grunts of pain filled the air as the thugs fell one by one. But amidst the melee, something caught his eye. A smaller, more vulnerable figure being dragged away from the others. A young girl, no older than 12, was struggling against the grip of a burly man with a scar that split his face like a lightning bolt. Terror's eyes narrowed, and a growl rumbled in his throat. He leaped-frogged over the fighting bodies and landed on the man's back, driving him to the ground. With a swift move, he freed the girl and she scurried away to safety. "You're a persistent little cockroach, aren't you?" The scarred man sneered, drawing a knife from his boot. The Black Terror's eyes gleamed in the dim light. This was the leader, the one who had orchestrated this horror. "You're not leaving this pier alive," Terror said, his voice cold and final. The man cackled, raising his knife. "Let's see if your legend holds up, shall we?" The two adversaries circled each other, the air crackling with tension. The fog outside the warehouse thickened, sealing them in their grim dance of justice and evil. The fight was about to begin, and the fate of the innocents hung in the balance. Black Terror's muscles coiled as he feigned an attack. The scarred man fell for the bait, lunging with his knife. In a blur of motion, Terror sidestepped and grabbed his wrist, twisting it until the knife clattered to the ground. The man howled in pain, but his grin remained, exposing a mouthful of rotten teeth. "You're fast," the leader conceded, "but I've seen faster." With a twist of his body, he sent a boot hurtling towards Terror's head. The hero ducked, the boot glancing off his shoulder. He retaliated with a swift uppercut, knocking the air from the man's lungs. The two crashed into the crates, sending them flying. The impact echoed through the warehouse like a symphony of destruction. The leader stumbled back, reaching into his coat. His hand emerged with a glinting object, a grenade. His thumb hovered over the pin, his eyes alight with madness. "You win," he croaked, "but you'll never save them all." Terror's eyes widened. He knew what that meant. His heart racing, he dove towards the grenade. His hand closed around it, and with a grunt, he hurled it through the open warehouse door. The explosion rocked the building, sending a shockwave of heat and debris into the night. In the sudden silence, the hero turned back to the survivors, his eyes scanning for the girl. She was there, hiding behind a crate, trembling but alive. He rushed to her side, cradling her in his arms. "It's over," he murmured. "You're safe now." Her eyes searched his masked face, looking for the humanity behind the symbol of terror. And there, amidst the smoke and ruin, she found it. The promise of a protector in the dark. The Black Terror stood tall, his cape billowing in the cooling breeze, a beacon of hope amidst the foggy despair. The girl clung to him as they stepped out into the light. The fog was lifting, revealing a line of police cars and flashing lights. The sound of sirens grew louder, a symphony of relief to her ringing ears. The officers rushed in, securing the area, checking the crates for more survivors. Each time they pulled someone out, the girl's grip on terror tightened, her hope growing. A figure emerged from the shadows, Commissioner Reed, his face a mask of grim determination. His gaze flickered to the girl, then back to terror. "I'll take it from here," he said gruffly. But the girl's arms tightened. "No," she whispered. "He's the one who saved us." Reed nodded, his expression softening. "We owe you one, Terror." The Black Terror's eyes never left the girl. "Just doing my job," he said, setting her gently on her feet. "Tell them what you saw. Tell them who did this." With a nod, she took a deep breath and stepped forward. The commissioner led her away, promising safety and justice. As they disappeared into the crowd of officers and EMTs, Terror turned back to the warehouse. The fog had thinned, but the stench of evil remained. He knew there was more to this horror than a simple human trafficking ring. This was the work of a monster, one that would not rest until it had fed its insatiable hunger for power and pain. And he knew that monster had a name. The Black Terror vanished into the lifting mist, leaving the shattered warehouse and its secrets behind. As the sun began to break the horizon, the silhouette of a man swathed in darkness became one with the shadows of the city. He had a name to uncover, a trail to follow, and a promise to keep. The night was over, but the hunt had just begun. The streets of Empire City were his battlefield, and he was their protector. The criminals would soon learn to fear the fog, for it heralded the coming of the man who dealt in justice and terror. The Black Terror would not rest until every soul was free from the clutches of evil, and every alleyway echoed with the footsteps of those who dared to oppose him. But for now, he melted into the dawn, a silent sentinel waiting for the next scream to pierce the night. Days turned into nights, and the whispers grew louder. The criminals of Empire City knew they had a new enemy, one who didn't fear the fog or the dark. The Black Terror's reputation grew with every broken chain, every life saved. Yet the name of the monster remained elusive, a specter haunting his thoughts. Terror haunted the city's underbelly, piecing together the clues. His nightly patrols grew more intense, his eyes peeled for any sign of the elusive trafficker. The stench of fear grew stronger in the damp streets as word spread of his nocturnal crusade. One night, a whisper reached his ear, a meeting at the abandoned train station, a place where the lost and the damned often found their final rest. It was there that the criminals traded in human misery, and it was there that terror would find his prey. The station was a labyrinth of shadows and decay. The air was thick with the scent of diesel and despair. The Black Terror moved through the darkness, his every step a promise of retribution. Voices grew louder, the murmurs of a deal about to be sealed with the blood of innocents. He found them huddled around a table, maps and weapons sprawled out before them. The scar-faced man was there, his grin a grotesque parody of a smile. He had not seen terror's approach. His arrogance had made him careless. The hero didn't announce his presence with a dramatic flourish or a bellow of rage. He simply appeared, a black specter in the doorway, the red of his cape seeming to pulse with the heartbeat of the city. The room went quiet. Knives slipped into hands, guns cocked with a metallic symphony of death. But the scar-faced man only chuckled. "Back for more, are you?" he jeered. "You can't save them all, you know. The world's a cruel place, and it's only getting crueler. But that's what makes this so much fun, isn't it?" The Black Terror's eyes remained unblinking behind the mask. "You're right about one thing," he said, his voice low and deadly. "The world is cruel, but it's about to get a taste of its own medicine." The battle was swift and brutal. Bullets flew like bees, but terror was the wind that scattered them. His fists were hammers that shattered bones, and his boots cracked the concrete beneath the traffickers' feet. They fell like dominoes, one by one, until only the leader remained. The scar-faced man had drawn a knife, the same one he had used to terrorize the girl. He lunged, but terror was ready. With a swift kick, he sent the blade flying into the night, then grabbed the man by the throat. "Your reign ends here," he whispered. The man's eyes bulged, his fingers clawing at the unyielding grip. His breath rattled in his throat, his laughter turning to choking gasps. "You can't kill me, hero," he croaked. "You're not like me." "That's where you're wrong," Terror said, his voice a cold whisper. "Because unlike you, I know the value of every life, and I'm going to make sure you never forget it." The grip tightened, and the man's eyes grew wide with terror. The Black Terror had come for justice, and tonight it had been served. But as he stood over the defeated villain, he knew that the battle was far from over. The war against the monsters of Empire City raged on, and he was its fiercest weapon. The fog rolled in once more, a shroud for the city's secrets, and he vanished into the night, ready to face whatever horrors it held. For in the heart of darkness, there is always room for a little terror. The scar-faced man's body lay at the feet of the Black Terror, his eyes unseeing, his chest unmoving. The survivors had been freed, their whispers of gratitude following him like a silent chant. But the victory was bittersweet. The man had not given up his secrets easily. His lips had remained sealed, even as the life drained from his eyes. Terror knew he had to act fast. Every minute wasted could mean more lives lost. He scoured the room for clues, his gaze finally landing on a crumpled piece of paper sticking out of the leader's pocket. He unfolded it with care, the edges sticky with blood. It was an address, a warehouse on the city's outskirts, a place where the lost and forgotten were swallowed up by the night. Without a second glance at the fallen, he bolted out of the train station and into the waiting embrace of the fog. The address was his new target, the next battleground in his never-ending war. The warehouse loomed before him, a monolith of despair in the moonlit night. He could hear the faint cries of the trapped souls within, their anguish fueling his rage. The door was locked, but a swift kick sent it flying open with the force of a cannonball. Inside, a maze of crates and shadows greeted him, a twisted labyrinth designed to hide the worst of humanity's atrocities. He moved like a ghost, his eyes piercing the darkness, searching for any sign of life. And then he heard it, the unmistakable sound of a heart beating in fear. He followed it, his boots silent on the cold, damp floor. The path grew narrower, the stench of desperation thickening. And there, in a corner, hidden behind a tower of crates, he found her, the girl from the docks. Her eyes were wide with terror, but when she saw the figure in black, the fear began to dissipate. She recognized the cape, the emblem of hope. The Black Terror crouched beside her, his hand gentle on her trembling shoulder. "You're safe now," he murmured. "But we can't rest yet. There are more like you, and we have to save them before it's too late." Her nod was firm, determination shining through the fear. Together they moved through the warehouse, cutting through the fog of despair like a knife. Each step brought them closer to the heart of the operation, the man behind the horrors. But as they approached, the air grew colder, the shadows deeper. Terror could feel the presence of something malevolent, something that didn't belong in this world. And when they reached the final room, they saw it. A creature of nightmares, feasting on the hope of the innocent. This was the true monster, the one who had orchestrated the suffering of so many. The girl gasped in horror, but Terror's resolve was unshaken. He had faced the worst of humanity, and this creature was no different. He stepped forward, his fists clenched, ready to fight. The creature looked up, its eyes glowing with malicious intent. "You've arrived just in time for the main event," it hissed. The Black Terror's eyes never left the monster's face. "The night is mine," he said, "and I don't share well with demons." The creature lunged, but Terror was ready. The battle that followed was one of light and shadow, of good and evil. Each blow was a declaration of war, each dodge a silent promise of victory. The air was charged with the electricity of combat, the sound of bone and flesh colliding a grim melody. But as the creature grew weaker, the girl's voice grew stronger. She had found a hidden strength, a courage that had been forged in the fires of her own terror. She picked up a discarded pipe and swung it with all her might, striking the creature a blow that sent it reeling. Together, they brought the monster to its knees. And with one final, crushing punch, the Black Terror sent it spiraling into oblivion. The room was silent, the air thick with the scent of victory. The girl looked up at the Black Terror, her eyes wide with awe. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded, his masked gaze softening. "You did well. Now let's find the others and get them to safety." They worked together, uncovering the hidden compartments and freeing the captives. Each face that emerged from the shadows was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. But as they neared the end of the warehouse, they found something unexpected, a trap door leading underground. The girl's eyes grew wide with fear, and she clutched Terror's arm. "What's down there?" she asked. "The answers we seek," he said grimly. They descended into the bowels of the building, the air growing colder and damper with each step. The stench of decay filled their nostrils, hinting at the unspeakable acts that had been performed here. The girl's grip tightened, but she didn't let go. The underground chamber was a macabre sight, filled with twisted machinery and vats of bubbling liquid. The walls were adorned with symbols of pain and suffering, the air heavy with the echoes of screams long silenced. "This is where they experimented," Terror murmured, his voice barely audible. "Where they turned humans into commodities to be bought and sold on the black market." The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she remained strong. They had to keep moving. There had to be an end to this nightmare. They found a hidden room, the door a mere slit in the stone wall. Inside, they discovered the mastermind behind the operation, a man who was more mad scientist than human trafficker. He was surrounded by his twisted creations, his eyes gleaming with a madness that was all too real. "You've arrived just in time for the grand finale," he cackled, stroking a scalpel with a fondness reserved for a lover. The Black Terror stepped forward, his fists clenched. "This ends now," he said firmly. The madman only laughed, raising his weapon. The girl took a step back, but Terror's hand was steady. Their eyes met, his filled with a promise of vengeance, hers with a plea for salvation. "I won't let you turn her into one of your monsters," Terror vowed. The madman lunged, but Terror was a blur of motion. The scalpel clattered to the floor, forgotten. The fight was quick, brutal, and inevitable. When it was over, the madman lay in a heap, his twisted smile forever erased. They emerged from the warehouse into the early morning light, the fog dissipating with the rising sun. The girl looked up at her hero, her eyes filled with hope. "You're not just a ghost story, are you?" she asked. He ruffled her hair gently. "I'm the ghost story they wish they could forget," he said with a smile. With the survivors in the care of the authorities and the monster's operation in shambles, the Black Terror disappeared into the shadows, the echo of his footsteps fading into the heart of Empire City. The sun rose, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold. The fog lifted, revealing the grime and grit of the streets below. But the city was a little cleaner that day, a little safer. And though the night had been long and filled with horrors, there was a glimmer of hope in the air, a reminder that even in the darkest corners, there was a hero waiting to strike. The Black Terror's work was never done, but for now, he had brought a semblance of justice to the lost souls of Empire City. And as the girl watched him vanish into the daylight, she knew that somewhere in the night, he would be there, fighting for those who couldn't fight back. The story of the death march in the fog had come to a close, but the legend of the Black Terror had only just begun. As the days turned into weeks, the tales of his exploits grew, whispered in the alleyways and shouted from the rooftops. He was the bogeyman that made hardened criminals wet their beds, the guardian angel that brought hope to the desolate. His name became a symbol of fear for the wicked and a beacon of salvation for the oppressed. Yet, for every victory, a new horror was born in the shadows of Empire City. The criminals grew bolder, their operations more sophisticated. It was as if the fog itself was breeding a new kind of monster, one that fed on the despair of the city's inhabitants. The Black Terror knew that he couldn't do it alone. He needed allies, a network of eyes and ears that would help him snuff out the fires of injustice before they could spread. He reached out to those who had seen his true face, the survivors of the warehouse, the dock workers who had found themselves in the crossfire of the battle for justice. Together, they formed a silent alliance, a league of shadows that stretched across the city. They whispered in the ears of the powerful, planted seeds of doubt in the hearts of the corrupt. They became the fog that wrapped around the necks of the wicked, choking them until they confessed their sins or met a swift end at the hands of the vigilante. And so, the war raged on, a never-ending battle against the darkness that threatened to consume the city whole. Each night, the Black Terror patrolled the streets, his cape fluttering in the breeze, a stark reminder that there was nowhere to hide from justice. But as the city grew safer, so did the shadows deepen. For every monster he vanquished, another took its place. The game was changing, and Terror knew that he would have to adapt or become a relic of the very world he sought to protect. The whispers grew louder, of a new threat, one that was more than just a madman with a knife or a greedy businessman with a penchant for human misery. This was something ancient, something that had slithered from the depths of the city's dark history. A figure emerged from the fog, cloaked in mystery, a chilling grin on its face. It watched Terror from afar, a silent chuckle echoing through the night. The Black Terror felt a shiver run down his spine, a warning that this was a foe like none he had ever faced before. He knew that the battle ahead would test his limits, that the price of victory might be higher than he could pay. But he also knew that there was no turning back. For as long as there was breath in his body, he would stand as the guardian of the night, the bane of evil, and the hero that Empire City needed. And so, with a new sense of purpose, the Black Terror disappeared into the mist, ready to face whatever horrors awaited him. The fog was his ally now, a shroud that concealed his approach and amplified his terror. The war for the soul of the city was far from over, but with each step he took, the light grew a little brighter. The next chapter in the saga of the Black Terror was about to begin, and the pages would be written in blood. The figure in the fog grew clearer with each step Terror took. It was a man, or what once was. His skin was pale and mottled, his eyes burning with a malevolence that seemed to suck the very life from the air around him. His grin was a twisted mockery of human emotion, revealing teeth that gleamed like polished bone. The creature stepped closer, and the air grew colder, the mist thickening with each exhalation of his foul breath. "You think you can stop me, hero?" the creature hissed. Its voice was a serrated knife through the stillness of the night. Terror didn't flinch. "I've faced worse than you, whatever you are," he replied, his voice a thunderclap in the quiet alley. The creature laughed, a sound that set Terror's teeth on edge. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," it said, raising a hand. Before the words had left its lips, the alley erupted in a frenzy of motion. The creature lunged, its movements liquid and unpredictable. Terror met the attack with a ferocity that could only come from the depths of his soul. The two collided with the force of a storm, the cobblestones cracking beneath their feet. The battle raged through the night, a dance of shadows and steel. The creature was unlike any he had faced before, fast, strong, and seemingly untouchable. Terror's punches and kicks found only air, his grapples slipping through the creature's inhuman form. Yet, it was clear that the creature enjoyed the game, toying with him like a cat with a mouse. But Terror was no one's plaything. As the creature grew overconfident, Terror spotted an opening. He took it without hesitation, driving a fist into the creature's chest with the power of a freight train. The creature staggered back, its grin fading for the briefest of moments. The impact sent a shockwave through the alley, knocking over trash cans and shattering windows. The creature looked down at the fist-sized hole in its chest, seemingly surprised, before the wound began to knit itself closed. "Impressive," it sneered. "But futile. You cannot kill what has already died and been reborn in the shadows of the city's past." The creature lunged again, its speed seemingly increased by the taste of a challenge. But Terror was ready. He dodged the creature's grasp, spinning to deliver a roundhouse kick that sent it sliding across the alley. It hit the far wall and slumped to the ground, momentarily dazed. He knew he had to end this now, before the creature regained its footing. He charged, ready to deliver the killing blow. But as he approached, the creature's form began to dissolve into the mist, leaving nothing but the echo of its laughter. The Black Terror stood alone in the alley, the fog swirling around him like a living thing. He knew that this was far from over. The creature had retreated, but it would be back. And when it did, the stakes would be higher than ever before. The night was still young, and the city was vast. The creature was out there, somewhere in the labyrinth of streets and alleys, plotting, growing stronger. Terror took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his mission pressing down on him like a leaden cloak. But he was not alone. The survivors of the warehouse, the dock workers who had seen the truth, they were his eyes and ears. They would help him find the creature, bring it to justice, and free the city from its grip. He turned and sprinted into the night, the cape billowing behind him like a banner of vengeance. The fog parted before him, as if even it knew better than to stand in his way. The hunt was on, and the Black Terror was coming for the creature that had dared to challenge him. In the weeks that followed, the city was plagued by whispers of the creature's deeds. People went missing, leaving only trails of cold fear in their wake. The fog grew denser, the air heavier with the scent of corruption. Terror and his network worked tirelessly to uncover the creature's lair, to understand what they were dealing with. They found signs of ancient rituals, remnants of a time when the city's foundations were stained with darker purposes. The girl from the docks had become his confidant, her courage unflagging in the face of the unknown. She had a vendetta of her own to settle, a personal vendetta that mirrored his own. Together, they pieced together the puzzle of the creature's origins, a being born of the city's own sins, a reflection of the darkness that had been festering in its heart for centuries. One fateful night, the creature struck again, leaving behind a trail of terror that led to the city's oldest cemetery. The Black Terror and his allies followed, their hearts pounding in unison with the rhythm of the city's pulse. The moon was a bloated eye in the sky, watching the unfolding drama with a cold, unblinking stare. They found the creature in the heart of the graveyard, surrounded by a ring of fire, its eyes gleaming like embers. The air was thick with the stench of sulfur and decay, the very essence of the creature's power. It had gathered a cult of followers, desperate souls seeking refuge in the embrace of fear. "You dare to challenge me in my own domain?" the creature hissed, its voice a symphony of malice. The Black Terror stepped forward, the firelight playing across the contours of his mask. "You have no domain but the pits of hell, and even there you won't be safe from me," he said, his voice resonating with the promise of retribution. The creature's grin grew wider, a grotesque parody of human mirth. It gestured to the cultists, and they advanced, a tide of madness and malice. The battle was fierce, the clang of steel on bone echoing through the graveyard. Terror and his allies fought like demons, each strike a declaration of war on the creature's very existence. The girl was a whirlwind of fury, her every move a testament to the strength that had been awakened within her. But the creature was cunning, using its followers as shields and weapons. The Black Terror's rage grew with each fallen comrade, his fists like hammers of wrath. The creature was stronger than any he had faced before, its power drawn from the very fabric of fear itself. As the night grew long, Terror knew he had to end this. He couldn't let the creature's influence spread further, couldn't let it claim more lives. With a roar that shook the tombstones, he launched himself at the creature, his fists a blur of shadow and light. The creature met him in the center of the flaming ring, its eyes locked on his. The world around them fell away, the only sound the crackling of the fire and their labored breathing. The Black Terror's fists connected with a force that could topple buildings, but the creature only chuckled, the impact seemingly meaningless. It grabbed Terror's arms, its grip like ice, and stared into his soul. "You think you can defeat me with your petty human strength?" it taunted. "You don't understand the power you're dealing with. You don't understand what I am." With a snarl, Terror headbutted the creature, knocking it back. He knew that brute force wouldn't be enough. He had to find the creature's weakness, had to strip it of the power it had stolen from the city's fear. The girl saw his struggle and stepped into the ring, her eyes filled with a fierce determination. She whispered a prayer, a plea for the strength to face the darkness. And then she did something unexpected. She reached out to the creature, her hand trembling with the effort. The creature paused, its grin faltering for the first time. "You're not a god," she said, her voice steady. "You're just a man, twisted by your own greed and madness, and we won't let you win." The creature recoiled, its grip on Terror's arms loosening. For a moment, it looked almost human, almost pitiful. But then the flames in its eyes grew brighter, and it lunged at her. The Black Terror saw the creature's attention shift and took advantage of the opening. He slammed his elbow into the creature's face, breaking its nose with a sickening crunch. The creature howled in pain and rage, its grip loosening further. "Run!" he bellowed at the girl, pushing her out of harm's way. But she stood her ground, her eyes never leaving the creature. "No," she said firmly. "We finish this together." The creature roared and swiped at her, but she ducked and rolled away, her agility surprisingly graceful. The Black Terror felt a surge of pride and determination. This girl, this symbol of hope and courage, was not going to let fear win. The creature was now fully enraged, its power growing with every snarl and flame that danced in its eyes. It lifted a massive gravestone and hurled it at Terror, who barely had time to dodge. The stone crashed into a nearby crypt, the ground shaking with the impact. The girl took the opportunity to sprint towards the creature, her hands outstretched. She whispered something that sounded like a chant, and a light grew around her, pushing back the shadows. The creature stumbled, its grin fading into a snarl of pure anger. Terror watched in amazement as she reached out again, her hand glowing with a light that seemed to be drawing the darkness from the creature. It writhed and screamed, its body contorting as the power was siphoned away. The creature's followers watched in horror as their leader weakened. Some tried to flee, but others were drawn into the light, their eyes clearing as if from a fevered dream. The girl's power was not just to fight the creature, but to free those it had ensnared. The creature, now a mere shell of its former self, staggered back. You can't do this," it shrieked. "We already have," Terror said, driving a fist into its gut. The creature doubled over, gasping for breath. The girl stepped up and placed her hand on its forehead. "Your reign of terror ends here," she said, her voice a soft yet powerful command. The creature screamed one final time, its body crumpling to the ground. The flames around them began to die down, the fog retreating as if in fear of the light that had been unleashed. The Black Terror and the girl stood in the graveyard, surrounded by the remnants of the creature's power. The city's heartbeat grew stronger, the night air cleaner. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. "What do we do now?" the girl asked, her voice shaking slightly. "We keep fighting," Terror said, his voice firm. "For every soul lost in the fog, for every whisper of fear that tries to take hold, we fight, and together we'll make sure the light never goes out."